would like to introduce a gentleman, one of my sidekicks. He's an associate athletic director at George Mason University, and he is responsible for our marketing, and he does a fantastic job. I'd like you to give him a nice round of applause. Andy Ruge. I'd also like to begin by telling you that I've been very happily married for 39 years. Yes, most audiences clap when I say that. 3 different wives. No, I'm only kidding, I'm only kidding. But my wife and I, we arrived here at George Mason University April 1st of 1997. Now you got to understand what the condition of the program was at that time. The team had just experienced its 7th consecutive losing season. They had finished in last place in the league 4 years in a row. In fact, how many of you are familiar with what a play-in game is? For those of you who don't know, let me explain. There are 9 teams, or were 9 teams in our league at that time. For the play-in game, that's in the tournament at the end of the season. The 8th place team plays the 9th place team. The last place teams play each other to see who's going to actually make it into the tournament. That's called the play-in game. Well, we had lost so much and it appeared in the game so often, they started calling it the George Mason Invitational. That's not a good thing. So when I arrived on April 1st, 1997, I met with our team and sat down with them and started discussing what it took to be a championship caliber team. We started choosing role models for our program. Who were the top teams in the country back then? Now we're talking 1997, 13.
Kentucky.
Duke, Kentucky. Why do we know that? Because they know the formula. They've been there. They're there every single year. The same schools are at the top. So I asked our players, what do they do? And our players sat and we discussed the building blocks for a successful championship caliber, not only basketball program, but any organization. Those building blocks we refer to as the 8 C's. And the building blocks come in pairs. They come in pairs. The first pair is character and competitiveness. Then competence and consistency. Cohesiveness and commitment. And finally, communication and confidence. Those are the 8 C's and the way we were going to build our George Mason basketball program. Now, after 7 straight losing seasons, and then having our players and my coaching staff embrace the 8 C's, we are now the winningest program in our conference's history. We've won more games than any other school in the CAA, our league. And we've been to more postseason events and have won more postseason games than anybody in our conference. So we're very, very proud of that fact. But the way we did it was a huge key. There's a great book called Good to Great. How many of you read it? A lot of you have read it. So you know. One of my favorite quotes in the book written by Jim Collins, is, get the right people on the bus and then decide where you are going. And that's what we did at George Mason. We wanted to get the right people on the bus. So what I want to share with you is a story about the 8 C's. And these stories will reflect what the 8 C's mean to us. And I'm going to begin with character and competitiveness. Character is basically having a good person. When you are hiring, when you're looking for talent, in our case, if I'm looking for an assistant coach, if I'm looking for a player, I want a good person. That is very, very important to us, someone with high moral character. Right? But if that person is a good person, good guy, but doesn't compete, he's not going to succeed, not at the highest level. So character and competitiveness go hand in hand. So I'm going to share with you a story and a role model of ours at George Mason University. And the story is about Dr. Alan Merton, president of George Mason University. 10 years ago, he called a meeting with his deans. He brought them all together. Now, George Mason was making great strides, but he called them all together and said, how can we get better? How can we improve? What's our next step? And one of the deans raised his hand and said, you know, President Burton, what I think we need like a celebrity faculty member, someone who's recognized nationally, maybe even internationally. Another dean immediately raised his hand and said, I got the perfect guy. It's Dr. Vernon Smith from the University of Arizona. Third guy raised his hand and said, are you crazy? We can't get Vernon Smith. He's been in Arizona for 22 years. Everybody knows he's indoctrinated there. He's never going to leave. Now, I'm telling you this, I know some presidents, I'm not saying this about all of them, but I know most that would have ended it. Not Dr. Merton. He's got character and he's got that competitive spirit. He left that meeting, immediately called Dr. Vernon Smith at the University of Arizona, set up an appointment. Flew out to Arizona and recruited him. He convinced a guy who had been in Arizona for 22 years to come on an interview. Just come and look at George Mason. He flew him in. And when he arrived on campus, he gave him the Arnold Palmer treatment. We used to call it the Tiger Woods treatment. We don't call it that. The Arnold Palmer treatment. What is the Arnold Palmer treatment? We showed him around campus on a golf cart. So he doesn't have to walk, he can just take in all the sights, and they do a fantastic job. Vernon Smith goes back to the University of Arizona, and within a month decides to make the move to George Mason University. A year later, Dr. Merton gets the phone call from Vernon Smith. Just wanted to notify you and invite you to join me. I just won the Nobel Prize for Economics. And Dr. Merton, whoa! So what ends up happening is Dr. Merton's character and competitive spirit would not allow him to leave that meeting with his deans and not at least give it a great effort. And his efforts paid off. Now, in your business, as in my business, you got to go out and recruit. You got to find the best talent. The talent that's going to help your organization be the best that it can be. So I used that example, and I went back and told my coaching staff that story. And so we got involved with a player who you saw in that video. His name is Larranaga Campbell. He's from Silver Spring, Maryland, Springbrook High School. And when he was a senior in high school, he was all state. He was all everything in the state of Maryland. And he was being highly, highly recruited by all the big-time programs. And we got ourselves involved with Larranaga. And it came down to two schools, Georgetown. Any Georgetown people here? And George Mason. And we were in a battle, and all the experts said, you don't have a chance. He's going to Georgetown. You're wasting your time. And I kept telling my coaches, Vernon Smith, Vernon Smith, Vernon Smith. Just remember that. And then we did something else that good recruiters always do. And my staff is really great at this. We knew how good Larranaga was, and we knew how good Georgetown was and how successful they are in recruiting. So what we did is we did research. See, when you're looking for the top recruit, you have to also know that that program is not just after one person. They've got to look for a lot of good people. So we found out who else Georgetown was after, a young man in Stanton, Virginia. So what did we do? We went after him too. So, well, if we don't get Larranaga, we'll get this young man. But if they get him, maybe we'll get Larranaga. And so it was a battle. And you know what happened? That other young man visited Georgetown first. Larranaga had a family commitment, couldn't get there. The other young man went to Georgetown. Loved it, and before he left there, committed. So Larranaga Campbell ends up, man, even, I'm not sure if Georgetown was his first choice. I think it might have been at the time. But we had worked so hard and positioned ourselves. We understood in the competitive nature that maybe somebody else will grab that scholarship before Larranaga even visits. He did. He went to Georgetown. Larranaga came to us. Larranaga led us to the Final Four. He scored a total of 1,586 career points. That other young man went to Georgetown and scored a career 99 points. 1,586 to 99. So we ended up, because we were able to position ourselves, because we did our research, because we did our homework, because my assistant coaches did such a great job of putting us in position to get one or the other, that we were able to come away with a superstar for our basketball program. So you have to have great character, and you have to be competitive. And you're looking for talent that mimics that. It's not only in my staff, but in my players that we want to have kids with great character, kids who are really competitive. And I'm very, very proud to say that it's not only our basketball success, but our success in the classroom that's working so well. These kids compete in the classroom. Our graduation rate has just been recognized by the NCAA, that's the governing body for college athletics, and has named the George Mason men's basketball program in the top 10% of all the basketball programs in the country. You can clap for that. We've graduated 100% of our players since we went to the Final Four. A lot of teams, after they have success, their players start leaving early. Our players have stayed and graduated. Now, the next story I want to share with you is the second set of building blocks. Character, competitiveness, competence, and consistency. What is competence? Competence is skills. Do you have the skills for your job? Consistency is, do you perform every day? Do you have the discipline to bring your best every day to the office? And that's what we're looking for. Somebody who has great skill at what they do. In coaching, it's recruiting, it's teaching the game, it's strategy. In recruiting a player, it's shooting, dribbling, passing, rebounding, defense, all of those skills, and have players who are so competitive they will bring those skills to work every single day. They have that kind of discipline. So let me ask you a question. How many of you are parents? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Okay, a lot of you are parents. So how many of you think you're good parents? Did everybody raise their hand? Because I'm not raising my hand. At least not when I was young. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. My oldest boy is Jay. He's now 35 years old, and it's a miracle he was able to grow up with me being his dad. I'm serious. I had no idea how hard it was to be a father. My son, he's eating spaghetti, takes the bowl and puts it over his head. I'm laughing hysterically. My wife is, what are you doing? Bad habits. He'll start doing that in public. It'll be funnier in public. No, you can't do that. Oh, man. And then he got in trouble. When he started school, he got in trouble. And as soon as the teacher told me he got in trouble, I did what my dad did to me. Because I turned out all right. What did my dad do when I did something wrong? Come on, some of you must be in my generation. What do? Bang! He punched me. Ow! Are you kidding? Don't do that again. I won't. So Jay gets in trouble at school. Spank him. It was done on a regular basis now. So you know what? I'm feeling terrible. I'm feeling terrible about my parenting skills. It's awful to feel that way. I'm going to bed at night. I'm scarring this kid. What am I doing wrong? So one night I go to a dinner party. I'm at a dinner party, and a guy comes up to me and he says, hey, I'm a big basketball fan. I was at the University of Virginia at the time in Charlottesville. Comes up to me and, talk about the basketball team a little bit. I said, hey, what do you do? And he says, I'm a child psychologist. What's your name again? Dr. Jerry Saffer. Hey, Jerry, can I ask you a couple of questions about parenting? And he starts sharing with me some advice as to how to parent better. Right? One of the things he tells me, which I think is ridiculous, he says, ask your son how you're doing. He said, what do you mean? He said, ask your son if there are things that he'd like you to change. Really? Okay, so the next day, now my son Jay goes to St. Anne's Belfield Elementary School, and I'm driving him to school the next morning, and I can't just ask him, I got to come up with something more creative than that. So I said to him, hey Jay, if you had Aladdin's lamp, and the genie granted you 3 wishes about things that you might want to change in Dad, what would they be? Is that pretty cool or what?
Yeah.
Right? But this was his response. Without hesitation, and it absolutely froze me. He said, I would only need 2. 2? Okay, what are they? That you would quit spanking me, and you wouldn't go away so much. Oh my God. I almost cried. I feel like crying now. I dropped Jay off. I went to my office. I got on the phone. Who did I call? My wife. What do? Do I have to quit my job? She said, call Jerry Saffer. He got me into this.